We're happy to welcome our international keynote speaker, Miri Rodriguez, the head of Global Internship Program at Microsoft, for our next session at Aries. As a renowned storyteller, Miri will discuss innovations that may impact today's proptech and tech sectors, as well as the humans and communities that work in those industries, as well as speak on the importance of storytelling in the age of smart homes, robotics, and AI assistants.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for having me today. My name is Miri Rodriguez. I am the author of the book Brand Storytelling. I am also the head of global internships at Microsoft. I am a mom, I'm a daughter, I'm a wife, I'm a sister, I'm so many things. I'm also very excited to join you at the summit today to talk about innovation and talk about something very deep, something that it's probably top of mind for a lot of people. In a world, in an age where we have to social distance due to a global pandemic, how do we stay connected? How do we keep that deep connection, that human connection, in a moment that is also a digital platform, right? We have to integrate technologies, platforms. How do we keep that? How do we keep that heart connection, that human connection? That journey started for me years ago, actually, before 2020. I was asked to do this job to become a storyteller in engineering at Microsoft. And quickly I learned that I thought I knew what storytelling was, but I really didn't know. Storytelling, I learned that it's not just telling stories. It is the actual intention and design of stories. It is taking the structure and the elements and the attributes of story, really driving this storyline, this building this with intention to really drive and conjure emotion and lead with empathy, as you see here. And this journey was not easy for me. Clearly, it was not. As I said, I thought I knew what it was, but it really took me a while to truly understand it. I had to ask a lot of people, actually, not what is storytelling, but what it is not. I had to ask people in industries that have been doing this for a while. These were storytellers in brands such as Disney, Coca-Cola, Google, Microsoft, of course, Amazon, Facebook. These were people that had been doing storytelling in different ways, in different business functions, different levels of the company. And I asked them, what is that storytelling? And they gave me a lot of answers, as you can imagine. And I learned quickly that storytelling is not information. It is not marketing, by the way. If you think that's just a marketing thing, it isn't. It is not data. It is not opinions. It's actually not going on Instagram and posting stories and saying you're a storyteller. So if it's not all that, then what is it? I learned that storytelling has these main elements, as you see here: character, plot, and conclusion. But it's really taking, as I said before, being intentional in your design, taking those three elements and actually transferring that information, that data, at an emotional level. And that is innovation. That is how we stay connected. Because people won't remember what you said or what you did. They'll remember how you made them feel. This is what Maya Angelou said. And so it's true. People will remember how you made them feel. And so I want to walk you quickly through what happened to me in my own journey of storytelling and how I'm able now to tell the stories that really matter and stay connected with our customers in the best way. As I said, I was asked to do this job in engineering. I am not an engineer. So the content was very technical. It was really about how we were digitally transforming at Microsoft, how we were taking our data from on-premises to the cloud, and how we're using our own technologies to do this. And as I'm not an engineer, I have many ideas of how to do this, but clearly they were failing. They were failing fast. And so I was at the time finishing my master's degree, and I took a track for user experience and design thinking. And so, as you probably already know, there's 5 steps of design thinking. I began to think about plugging this in for storytelling, how I can use these 5 steps and how I can actually begin to tell stories in this model. And so, when you can see here, design thinking starts and ends with empathy. So empathy was not a thing back then. Empathy, we hear about it today. We hear about leading with empathy, innovating with empathy, integrating empathy in our AI, for example. Innovation really has to have a component of empathy, because as we drive new technologies, we don't think about or empathize with our audiences, we can miss out and we can miss many opportunities. We run a lot of risks. So empathy is truly not only a notion or a concept, it's also an act. We can become empaths, by the way. I didn't know that. I had to learn that. I thought it was personality attributes, like some people are born empaths, some are not. I'm not one of them. But I learned also that for you to empathize and for you to think about your story, your innovation, you first have to find that universal truth. It's what I call universal truth. It's that feeling that your brand gives. It's that feeling that people have when they come in contact with an asset of your brand, with an email, with a salesperson, with a tweet, Instagram story, anything. You have to think about these pieces and how people feel consistently when they come in contact with your brand. That's what I call universal truth. At Microsoft, we had led with a truth for many years. Our hero in our story was the PC. Our mission was to put a PC on every desk in every home. So we did that. But of course, that was not it had to be reevaluated. We had to think about it differently once the Facebooks of the world came in, the Googles, they began to think, to own that market share. So we had to think it differently. And so our CEO, Satya, when he took the leadership as CEO, he went and rewrote our mission, right? He thought about rewriting and thinking about the universal truth. And so our mission became to empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more. And empowerment is our universal truth. That is truly what we lead with and what we want to make people feel empowered. So that's that feeling that we're evoking. Ask yourself, hey, what feeling does my brand story spark? What is the mission of my story? And do people feel that when they come in contact with it? I want to walk you quickly through the 3 levels of empathy because that is the first step to driving innovation, connectedness in your brand story. First one is cognitive empathy. As you see here, this guy in the middle, he's just leveling off. He's connecting with humans, and that's definitely where you need to start with your brand when you want to innovate with connections, with communications. You want to level off, and you want to meet people at their place. And that's, from a concept perspective, it's understandable. It's like, of course, Miri, of course. But when you think about practically how to do that, it gets harder. For me, I thought I knew what our engineers wanted to hear. I thought I knew the stories that needed to be told. Content was good, but it wasn't getting to them. And the reason it wasn't getting to them is because I had not stopped to think about cognitively, empathize with them in their spaces. Who are these engineers? What are they doing? How are they thinking? How do they learn? How do they consume content? What is important to them? Right? And so I began to think about that and ask questions, get curious. And I learned so much. I learned that they were scared that as they were doing this work for Microsoft, that their jobs would probably change or even be eliminated. I learned that they were feeling apprehensive because this new technology, they didn't know what to do next or how it would evolve next. Would they have the capabilities that they needed to continue the work? And so I led with that. I began to think about what that looks like for them. The content began to change. We began to think about that universal truth of being scared. That's a feeling. And so I wouldn't have learned that had I not stopped to be an empath at the cognitive level. The second level is emotional empathy. Emotional empathy is where you, as a brand, think about coming in and also humanizing yourself. In marketing, we used to say, hey, humanize your brand. And that basically meant talk more like a human, don't talk like a brand. Now, humanizing the brand really means that you have to think about how you show up as a human, how you connect with your customers, and talk about also how the brand is navigating COVID-19 and new technologies or things that are happening. It's really about meeting your customer in the space of their human and you're human. It's showcasing the humanity of your brand. The last level is I think the hardest level. It's the compassionate empathy level. It's where you as an individual, wherever you sit in this ecosystem of your brand, however you're thinking about offering that service or that product, you think about how you're feeling. And that enables you to practice empathy more. That enables you to become more of an empath day in and day out. The more you reflect on your own feelings, and you don't have to really talk about them, you can just reflect on them. That enables you to think more and become more of a compassionate, of an emotional impact, and also a cognitive impact to your customers. And so the more you do this, the better you get at it. Think about how you innovate, how you create new things. You start thinking differently when you begin to empathize. Let's think about AI, for example, this new technology, innovative technology. If we don't insert empathy in this, in the algorithms, if we don't code empathy in, what is that going to look like in the future when these machines begin to think for themselves? They are, right? So empathy is very important. That's the first step. Second step is to designing the story is, the second step is actually to define. Once you've empathized, as I showed you there, that's the first step, then you think about, hey, what is that story mission? What are we talking about? Who are we talking to? Who are the characters in our story? You get more intentional because you're empathizing. You think about how the plot is going to unfold, how the conclusion will land. You give your story a mission. And it looks like this. It's just a simple mission statement to your story. My story is going to be dedicated to blank. Who is it for? Brand storytelling serves two purposes. One, it tells the story of the brand, why it exists, what are the core values, what are the services it offers, what is the social stance, what does it stand for in the future, what does it look like? That's brand storytelling. But it's also telling the story of what the brand is doing right now. So it serves twofold. It reminds your audience over and over why you exist, why they should pick you every single time. We're learning that Gen Alpha and Gen Z, they're intentional buyers, they're emotional buyers. So they connect with the brand, not just for the quality of the product and service, which is very important, but also for what the brand stands for the core values that it offers. So if I go in and I make a purchase and I'm contributing to a brand profit, I also want to know what that brand is doing. And if I don't align to those core values, then I probably will not buy the product, even if it's a good product. So you have to share that with the customers. You have to share your core values. And Story Mission does that. You begin to think about, hey, who am I dedicating the story to? So it can help them do what? Understand what? What is that you want them to walk away with when they come in contact with your story? They become connected emotionally. That's innovation. And make them feel. That's the last piece. And that's the most important piece again. What is it making your audience feel? How are they feeling when they come in contact with your brand? You also then ideate. This is the third step to brand storytelling and innovation in the marketplace. You begin to think about, hey, what does my customer look like in this journey? Do they see themselves in the story? Think about stories that you have been connected to, you're compelled to talk to about. When you watch a film, when you watch a show, when you read a book, clearly it is those stories that you can go, oh, I see myself a little bit there. I see a little bit of me in the character. So the customer wants to see themselves in the story, right? So when you present the brand story, where is the customer in the story? Think about that. What I'm showcasing here is called Scamper. It's a brand storytelling brainstorming tool that I use a lot when I think about the stories that I have in mind. Hey, what if I change something? What if I modify it? It's an acronym, as you can see here. It's if I can substitute, if I can reverse, give layers to your story. Get creative with your storytelling. Ask yourself, if your story had a color, what color would it be? If it had a smell, what smell would it be? Think about these elements of story outside of just a written story. There's so many forms, so many ways that you can tell the story. And there will be many ways that you will tell the story. So ideate. And then you get to prototype. You're going to come out of a lot of ideas from that story stuff, brainstorming session, hopefully. And then this is where you ask yourself, hey, should I go on TikTok? Should I do it on Instagram? I don't know. LinkedIn? Don't know. You will know because you begin to create these, what I call story concepts, these prototypes of stories. And they're not big effort stories. They're low cost, low effort prototypes. And they're meant for you to test this idea of content that you're sharing with your audience. This enables your audience also to know where you're going. And they'll respond with you. They'll be responsive or not. And then you can be like, okay, that didn't work. You begin to test it and you begin to think about what's working, what's not working. I did this with engineering. I began to think about, and I said I failed many times, failed for like 3 months because I thought I had the concepts, right? And I thought I had the ideas of the stories, and the story was good, right? Excuse me. The stories were good. But for me, I had to think about, again, who was it going for? what was I trying to make them feel? So as I thought about the story concepts, I began to think about this audience is a niche audience. They like to learn and read. They like to learn from experts. So my stories began to change. I used to write blogs from from I was the author, and then I changed to be doing it as a ghost writer. So there were many things that began to change because I began to test my story concepts. I asked myself, is the story evoking the emotion that I want from my audience? Again, innovation is driven by creativity. Creativity sits at the heart of our humanity. So for us to really tell the stories that we want to tell our customers, for us to innovate in our space, we have to create, we have to design, we have to think about our stories, not just from the telling perspective, but from the design perspective. So think about that in your next steps as you build your story, your brand story, and you connect with your customers in years to come. This is for the long haul. It's not a marketing scheme. It's not a trend. It's truly a way to connect with your customer at the best level, at the human level. So remember, if it doesn't have a character, a plot, and a conclusion, it's not a story. So it has to have those three. But you want to share that information through those characters, those plot, and the conclusion at an emotional level. Because stories are for your audience, not just to them. Meaning you're going to take time to empathize, to be authentic, to show up human. You're going to empathize with yourself, with your stakeholders. You're going to think through how they're consuming that content and how to best land that content. You're going to ideate. Again, innovation is creation. Create stories. Don't just tell stories. Create them. Design them with your customer in mind. Design the connection at the human level, and you will see the results. Do it with heart. That's the most important piece. Our customers are seeking that emotional connection. They want to befriend the brand. They want to know what the brand is about. They want to know beyond, Microsoft. Who works at Microsoft? Who's Miri from Microsoft? Would I see myself at a place like Microsoft? Can I trust Microsoft? If I get to learn Miri from Microsoft, maybe I will. And so that's where we begin to showcase the humans behind the brand. And that's the heart of the story. Now it's your turn. Please go ahead and apply the concepts that serve you best. The idea is to design stories. You don't have to do a design thinking approach like I'm sharing with you, but don't just tell a story, design it, create it with your customer in mind. I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to have me. Again, my name is Miri Rodriguez. I am the author of Brand Storytelling and the head of global internships at Microsoft. I pivoted my career 4 times in 8 years at Microsoft, and I love what I do today. I love it not only because I get to do what I do here and talk to you about my own experiences and my learnings, but I get to see our technology and the innovation day in and day out for a company who's leading in this space. And I can tell you this, I can tell you that innovation is a beautiful thing. It's also a scary thing because as we begin to innovate more and more, we map out the future that is uncertain, that can take a life of its own. But if we do it with empathy at the root of everything, if we empathize with ourselves, if we empathize with our stakeholders, we will do it and we will insert that humanity in everything that we do, including our brand story. So I encourage you today to become an empath, to lead with empathy, and to be creative in your own space. We are all creative. And that's something that we are as humans. We are storytellers. That's something that is cognitive to us at the human level. So think about that, and hopefully you'll be able to begin to tell stories differently, as I did and as I learned to do. Thank you for having me. You can connect with me on my social channels on LinkedIn, Miri Rodriguez, on Instagram and Twitter at Miri Rod, and on my website if you want to learn more, mirirod.com. Thank you again and be well.